Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Reverend Sally Fritsche, and I am the Associate Minister of this church. I am so glad to be here with you this morning. We are streaming live from our sanctuary here on Green Street. And as of today, we are no longer requiring online registration to attend Sunday morning services. We still ask that everyone in the sanctuary remain masked because we want to be able to welcome young kids and others not able to be vaccinated into our space together. You were invited when you arrived to grab a color-coded lanyard to indicate red for if you feel cautious of being in shared space and want to keep a distance, green to indicate you feel safer being physically closer together, might be up for hugs, yellow to indicate somewhere in between, and we always like to ask before we go in for a handshake or a hug. Look around and be aware and respectful of what color lanyard others are wearing and what their needs and boundaries are. Also, beginning this week, we are trying out a return to Fellowship Hall for our post-service coffee and snacks, which means folks will be eating and drinking, masks optional, in Fellowship Hall after the service. We continue to find our way forward through these uncertain times with our values and our mission at the heart of all the decisions we make. Our congregation's mission is to build a community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace. We are a church of many different beliefs, and yet amid all that difference, we come together week after week, year after year, and strive to do the work of beloved community. Know that in whatever form you find us today, whether you're here with me in the sanctuary, watching live from home, or returning to this recording weeks later, this service is here for you, and you are welcome. If you want to follow along with a written order of service, there's a printed version available here in the sanctuary, or you can find the link just below this video on our website. If you want to chat with your fellow UUCUC members, you can find the live stream chat box on our YouTube page. Remember that because we are live, there's still time to make your own contributions to our shared joys and sorrows later in the service. And to do that, you email your message into joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. Or if you're here in person, there are note cards for written joys and sorrows, which will be collected later in the service. I will also say it has been so long since we've had to make this kind of announcement, but joyful noises of all ages are more than welcome in our worship space. We love having kids here with us on Sunday mornings as we figure out what our religious exploration and engagement program will look like in the coming year, figure out how to best serve parents and families. In the meantime, we are glad to welcome all ages here with us. And now I will hand us off to our consulting lead minister, Reverend Karen Bush, or Reverend KB, who has some opening words from afar.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Karen Bush, and I am your consulting lead minister here at UUCUC. Part of this morning service is a continuing conversation to better understand how to support our parents here. You parents are in the midst of a battleground like none that I've ever known in my life as a parent. During lockdown and continuing on, from the stories I've heard and that I want to keep listening to, you have been in the midst of extraordinarily stressful fight or flight times, and you are pulled thin, and you are tired, and you are exhausted, and you are brave, and you are courageous, and you are strong. Today, we're going to hear from you through a number of ways, concluding with parent Adrienne Summerlot, who happens to be our Consulting DRE, who's going to share from her heart and from her home and from her experience of working with parents also. Our goal is that all of us may come from this hour together, all the more tuned in to you. something that weighs on me, and I know the other staff, is we know you're still dealing with so much in this recovery and in the unknowns coming ahead. And we care about that, and we want to know even more how we can care for you. The whole congregation wants to know this also. I keep getting asked again and again, how are our parents? What can we do? How can we support them? And I know in a very important step in that is to listen to the stories, deeply listen, and to understand as best we can. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're all here. We're in this together. We are a community. Thank you.
We begin our Sunday gatherings and many gatherings by lighting a chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, the flame of hope in the cup of sharing. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, I invite you to light it along with us as a way of making this shared space despite the distance. After our chalice lighting, we will hear a beautiful choral piece prepared by our choir to honor the courage and humanity of the Ukrainian people. We will light our flame today with words written by Reverend Kimberly Ann Tomchek Carlson and adapted by Reverend Leah Derlin Jones. They write, "We seek a beloved community, a people who do not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish our souls and share our gifts. May the light of this chalice flame remind us of the love surrounding and supporting all. May we feel held by the gentle and fierce power of this love."
The piece we're about to sing for you was written in 1885, at a time when the Ukrainian language itself was suppressed to prevent dissent and nationalist uprising in the Ukraine from the Russian Empire. Nonetheless, this piece was written as a prayer for the Ukrainian people, for their well-being and for their increasing sovereignty in that time. Furthermore, this is the first time that the choir has sung in this space in a service in more than 2 years, so we're very excited to return with Mykola Lysenko's Prayer for Ukraine today.
Many thanks to the choir for that beautiful prayer. Today's reading actually comes to us from one of our own, a UUCUC parent, Debbie Sperry, who's raising her twin girls who are 10 and a half years old, which means they have spent almost 20% of their lives under COVID-19 shadow. For those who have not been parenting children through this pandemic, today's entire service is a chance to share momentarily in another's experience and briefly put yourself in unfamiliar shoes. For those who have been parenting through this pandemic, today's service is a way to say, we see you. You matter. Your family matters. The work you're doing is needed, is sacred, and is part of what this community holds most dear and most holy. I've adapted Debbie's remarks for brevity, but when asked what parenting through this pandemic has felt like, here is what she writes. It is hard to describe. It feels like danger, fear that you would have to go into your workplace and have no place safe, and really no place at all to take your kids while schools and childcare are all closed. Leaving them in the car while you go into the grocery store to get milk because they didn't have masks and wouldn't keep them on anyway. It feels like claustrophobia, trying to set up and supervise virtual school while working from home at the same time. Household tasks like cooking, cleaning, and groceries suddenly increase by half due to the kids being home all the time. All at the same time that access to goods becomes more difficult. Seeing your kids being bored, losing out on friendships, and trying to figure out how to keep them happy and entertained, and ending up with just way too much computer time. Needing to get some time away from them. It feels like disorientation over and over and over, having to rearrange your small living space, your household routines, and family structures to accommodate changes in safety needs and policies. A general sense of loss of control over almost everything. She writes, I learned to appreciate the value of the things we have. I learned the true, serious meaning of multitasking in a way I had never known before. I learned to survive and make do in what seemed a constant context of fear, chaos, and uncertainty. To Debbie, to every parent feeling that fear, chaos, or uncertainty, our hope is that you no longer face those burdens alone. And may this community show up for you and help create the clarity, the spaciousness, and the possibilities that you and your kids need. Amen. Now, each Sunday here at UUCUC, we make space deliberately to share the joys and sorrows closest to our hearts. So what joys, what sorrows do you all bring into our time together? Think of them now, and if you wish me to share them aloud, there's still some time to send them in to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org, or if you're here with me in the sanctuary, you can write on a Joys and Sorrows note card and pass it along to the outside aisles where an usher will come by and bring it forward. Together, we will hear our blessing song, Long Time Son, and then I'll share aloud whatever joys and sorrows need to be shared with this community. A joy from Sam and Lynn. Joy for our new puppy, Booker, who arrived home last Sunday, and for our daughter, Caroline, and her friend, Kate, who came down from Chicago to coo all over him. A joy from Chris Hanauer. It was so moving to hear this wonderful choir perform live in this space again. It just felt right. From Jack, a joy, sister getting better from cancer. Thank you, Jack. From Sandy Finnerty, Karen Folk, Millie Davis, Priscilla Crone, Michelle McNabb, Catherine Porterfield. Our good friend Susan Thrasher, former member of this church, died yesterday at her home in Oxford, Ohio, after several months on hospice. She did both life and death her way, choosing joy and caring over despair. She had a peaceful end to a well-lived life. We are blessed to have remained her good friends for so many years. Thank you. From Jim and Sandy Hannum, a joy. Happy birthday, Juan, our pianist. From Katie Madigan, joy for being back in this space with my community and on a sunny spring morning. In parentheses, don't forget to donate to the auction. And from Anne and Dave Sharp, Anne's younger sister Mary died peacefully Wednesday morning in Rochester, New York. She died 10 days after being diagnosed with acute leukemia. Oh, sorrow indeed. I thank you all for sharing as deeply as you did. I invite us all to take a breath, drop your shoulders down, and let us hold these joys and sorrows with all the love and tenderness that they deserve. No matter what joys or sorrows you carry in your heart today, spoken or unspoken, I pray that you feel the love of this community in this moment, stretching between us, knitting us together. I pray that in that connection, you always find whatever it is you need most. And now I invite you to take these next moments to find your own words, asking for what you most need, or simply breathe and rest with this moment for meditation. Thank you, Juan. We all know it takes a village to raise a child, but when the first lockdowns began in 2020, parents of young children were suddenly asked to be their kids' entire village. Our Reverend KB planned today's service as a way to lift up and acknowledge the ways in which we all may be weathering the same storm, but we are in very different boats. Today, we honor the boat that our community's parents have found themselves in and ask what we might do to support and show up for them, even now as the vaccinated adult world seems so ready to move on. Our Consulting DRE, Adrienne Summerlot, who is herself a parent of young children, has offered her own deeper reflection to share.
Good morning. I am Adrienne Summerlot, your Consulting Director of Religious Exploration and Engagement, and I'm joining you from Bloomington, Indiana. First question that KB asked me was, what was a challenge for you as a parent and a family during the pandemic? Well, to be honest, in short, all of it. Like, no joke, seriously. You might remember some of the parenting books. Maybe you even have these on your shelves. What to expect when you're expecting, what to expect the first year. I think there might have even been one, what to expect the toddler years. And I'm pretty sure there was not one word uttered during that time about what it means to parent during a pandemic, right? There was no chapter 4, this is how you do it, okay? And honestly, there's been some resources here and there kind of sprinkled in about, but like everybody's just flying by the seat of their pants. We're all just doing our best, trying to figure it out, putting one foot in front of the other. And yet I can say I am crispy. Okay, you guys know, like, you can make bacon, all right, and it's hard to mess up bacon because bacon's delicious. But usually, like, good bacon, it's a little floppy, a little crispy around the edges. I'm talking that bacon that was a casualty and it's like full on crispy and brittle, and like you hold it and it's just stiff. And like, if you try to bend it, it just crumbles and shatters everywhere. I've definitely had those days. I feel like maybe I'm coming out of it, but definitely crispy. And when I talk to friends, they're like, yep, that tracks. That's pretty spot on. A lot of us weren't prepared for this. A lot of us need school and daycares and those sort of support structures in place to be able to work, to be able to thrive. And honestly, as adults, to sometimes have a break. Sometimes that 10 minutes makes a big difference. So we realized the scaffolding wasn't there. We realized systems were failing. We hold that like in our hearts to feel that there weren't plans. There weren't realistic plans that could support families. And we had to sit with that, and we wrestled with that, and we expanded our own personal bandwidths to be, you know, home chefs and school teachers and counselors, and saw what little support systems that we actually have in place kind of just get pulled right out from under us. We had to figure out how to get everybody to have their own spaces, and everybody was working from home. Myself, my husband, our 3 kids were all being in school. Suddenly our kitchen table, our dining table, was a command center so that people knew when people had different meetings and where the bandwidth was going and who could afford to be off the internet at certain times. And, you know, prioritizing quiet time. And I'm really actually quite thankful that my kids have been raised in the UU church, because the first thing that came out of our family meeting was, okay, we need to revise our covenant, our family covenant. How are we going to get through this? It's about how we're going to be in relationship with one another. And I do really thank goodness for that, because we kept revising and kept reworking on that covenant over and over and over again. And that's really hard when you have a very extroverted, very energetic young boy in your house and 2 teenage sisters. Let me just leave it at that. And of course, a dog and a cat too. But let me also share some of the things that helped. Feeling all of the blue light and screen time and a little bit of cabin fever as we spent so much time in our house together, we found getting outside to be helpful. My youngest would actually go with me for walks out in nature and just watching the seasons change and noticing what birds were up, or some of our favorite places, just how they were changing in the seasons. It helped us feel connected to time. The first summer of the pandemic, my son and my husband built a rain garden. We found joy in watching things grow and monarchs establishing themselves and emerging from their cocoon. That really was a beautiful, tender moment in our family history, because we felt like, okay, maybe we will come out of this on the other side. Outdoor fires, backyard camping, s'mores, some innovation by my husband to put up a sheet last summer. They were able to show a movie and have some friends over, socially distanced outside, and just a chance to feel some laughing, some simplicity of just gathering to watch a film together. School year, my kids stayed home and online the entire school year. That was incredibly hard. It was disappointing. It was heartbreaking. I watched them struggle with missing their friends, missing connections, and there was so much grief work. And I'm someone who's trained in how to do grief work. There was grief work of the little things that I honestly think before pandemic, we might have been a little annoyed by, that we had to go to the end of the year awards and the school concerts or things like that. But what I realized as a person and a parent was those were actually these beautiful little holding spaces, especially when you have multiple children, that you get to focus your attention on just one, right? This one's orchestra night. Those invitations for deep parent-child connection had suddenly just poof, vanished. I was reminded regularly, I kept hearing my grandmother's voice in the back of my head, reminding me that there's very few things that can't be fixed with a little chocolate and a good cup of tea. I'm so glad to have friends and colleagues who during this time rediscovered what a joy it was to send things in the mail. Imagine that, not just texts or emails or Facebook messages, but to actually send things in the mail. And that definitely fed me and inspired me and my kids. And we would make things together and send things to one another. And that's something that I actually really hope continues along. Oh my goodness, we played a lot of board games. We did a lot of puzzles. Some of the things that helped, I never thought I would say this, but my husband's kind of lame jokes or dad jokes, early on in the pandemic, he took to writing those on a board, and it was kind of fun, and it lightened spirits and made us all just chuckle a little, as did our pets, who, encouraged us to get up and to stretch and to move and to make us laugh, and who often kept us company through way too many hours of Zoom. Last summer came and there was a little bit of weight lifted, right? And knowing this past fall, I was able to get my son vaccinated. We're able to get our daughters boosted. We got boosted. That made us all feel just a little safer. But yet there was still this nagging feeling, right? This nagging feeling of, okay, what next? Can I really allow my heart to be hopeful that letting them go back to school is the right decision? That I can trust the school and people to make good decisions and to care about each other. You know, coming from a time when our country had been so divided, it was really hard to find that trust. To worry, that nagging feeling I realized was worrying, when's the other shoe going to drop? Right? I couldn't relax. We couldn't be at ease because there was this concern that something was going to just suddenly rip everything out from underneath us. What helped? We found watching sunrises or sunsets, especially for myself, as a quiet respite, the beginning of the day, just to center myself, just to take each day as it came. Super helpful. We found joy in our public library and them doing what they could whenever they could to make sure that books were available. We built blanket forts. I don't know how much I really looked forward to the 15 to 30 minutes that I had when I would get home from work before all the children would descend upon the house. That was a time sometimes I'd just take my dog outside and play, or I'd have an extra cup of coffee, or just sit there and appreciate quiet. Well, I have a newfound appreciation for that. I can tell you, I think I supported our local ice cream shop pretty solidly, just once things opened back up anyway, to drive there and treat myself to a little ice cream and not let anybody know I was leaving the house, and sit in my car and read a book, or have a little nap. Like, I often went out to my car and just napped, and I didn't tell anyone where I was going because, you know, my husband was home. Everybody was fine. Everybody was cared for, but like guiltily crept outside and was like, hope nobody sees me. A little guilty pleasure on a warmish day to sit out there and just, oh, it was bliss. I highly recommend it. An interesting thing that I found during the pandemic, and still now as we're sliding to emerge from a pandemic into an endemic, is rest and the need for rest. I'm a pretty high extrovert, and so are some other people in my house, and we are finding ourselves tired. We're finding ourselves being very thoughtful about how we're spending our social currency and needing to recharge. You know, teenagers, they sleep a lot, but my teenagers come home from school and are just zonked. Like, they need a few hours to rest and recharge before they can even like be with the family. And that didn't used to happen before. So I will say, I'm actually really grateful that KB asked me to share this with you, because this is the first time I actually set aside time to really think and reflect on these past 2 years. And it was hard, and it still is hard, and there's still a lot ahead that we don't know, and it still feels like we might be dancing 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But having this little moment to reflect and to think about how our family managed through this is actually really quite a gift. And so if you can find a few minutes, if you might sort through your Facebook or Instagram or photos and just kind of use that as a chance to go back through, because we've all endured a trauma, and the more we can reflect on that and work through it, the more we're going to come through this on the other side healthy, and we'll find healing. And we'll also continue to find healing as we come together and join with one another as we feel ready and as we feel safe here at UUCUC.
Many thanks to Adrienne for sharing that valuable and holy perspective with us all. We, as Unitarian Universalists, acknowledge that our circle of care does not stop here at our church doors. We are deeply connected to the community we find ourselves in and to the wider world. Please continue to keep an eye on our e-news weekly newsletter for opportunities to show up, to find support, to get involved, and to be part of this community. Thank you to the March Hospitality C Team leaders, Wendy Graves and Pat Feely, and to the Hospitality Team C members who helped with welcoming, ushering, providing decorations and snacks during the month of March, and a big welcome to April's Hospitality Team D. If you want to know more about what our hospitality teams do, get a little team spirit, you can stop by the Hub table in Fellowship Hall after today's service. I hope I will see many of you this Saturday, April 9th at 2 p.m. for a celebration of the life of Laura Wetzel, a longtime UUCUC member. Her service will be held right here in the sanctuary, which will be the first memorial service in the sanctuary since the pandemic, and will be followed by a reception in Fellowship Hall. Also remember that our Easter Sunday in the Park is coming up. I hope it's on your calendars. On Sunday, April 17th, we'll be out at Crystal Lake Park for an Easter flower celebration. You bring a flower from home to share and exchange with your fellow church members. And we will also be saying our formal goodbye to our beloved Reverend Florence in that service. Everyone's invited to show up and be part of our honoring and gratitude for her years of ministry with us. There will be desserts afterwards, a chance to contribute to a goodbye gift, and an all-ages egg hunt in the park. Each Sunday, in recognition of our very real interdependence and reliance on one another, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. For the month of April, which is Sexual Assault Prevention Month, we split our collections 50-50 with RACES, or the Rape Advocacy Counseling and Education Services. RACES is the only rape crisis center for Champaign, Ford, Douglas, and Piatt counties. And they provide all the services reflected in their name to survivors of abuse and their families. The mission of RACES is to provide compassionate, comprehensive support and to also care for our community through prevention, education, and programs that promote consent. You can give by text or through the online portal on our website. If you're here in the sanctuary, the basket will be passed. Any checks can be made out to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. No matter how you choose to contribute, half of your donation will go toward the work of this church, half will go to RACES. We invite you to give whatever is generous for you. And know that anything you contribute will be gratefully received and put to work, making a real impact here in our community. The offering will now be taken. Thank you, Han. And I'm reminded of my favorite quote about Phil Collins, which is, are you a Phil Collins fan? Well, I have 2 ears and a heart. So thank you for that. We will close our time together with chalice extinguishing words, followed by a final closing hymn. And today's closing music is extra special because all through the month of March, several of you were participating in a hymnal madness bracket, voting each week to determine the #1 favorite hymn of this congregation. The final was between Come, Come, Whoever You Are and Blue Boat Home. Today we celebrate our winner, Blue Boat Home, by singing it together as postlude. So first, we extinguish our chalice, after which I invite you to rise if standing is comfortable for you and join in singing hymn number 1064 in the teal hymnal. So our chalice extinguishing words. Deep calls unto deep. Joy calls unto joy, light calls unto light. As we extinguish this chalice and go out from this place, let us take within each of us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less, so do we pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are.